Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the fact that there's been no videos on this channel for the last 2 days. Unfortunately, Rahman moved in Retardanistan, and Retardanistan, we steal fiber cables thinking that they're copper.
That is absolutely correct. I have indeed moved, and indeed the fiber lines to my internet were sort of stolen over the weekend for some reason or other, but they are back in place now, and we can finally do videos on Morning Shot once again. So apologies for the little bit of absence, the all 20 emails that we received in complaints. Hopefully this will assuage your fears. But now it is time to dunk on mainstream media, because mainstream media cannot read polls, and it's really annoying.
If the ANC were to go to the election tomorrow, based on their polling, the ANC would get 39% of the vote. The DA would get 20% of the vote. The EFF, 18%. I'm shocked at that number. IFP 5, Action SA 4, ACDP 1, Freedom Front Plus 2, Cope 1? I didn't even know Cope was still a party. And all the other small little minnow parties would get like a total, when combined together, of 6%.
Yeah, and unfortunately, all those numbers that you spat out at the moment, Byron, are absolute bullshit and incorrect. So we all saw the headline that, the ANC is below 40%, the ANC is at 39%. Nonsense. Look at the poll directly. It said 100% of the poll said this, 20% of the people surveyed said they're not taking part or they don't know. You can't extrapolate 100% of voters saying X if 20% didn't say X. So you must actually take the 39% out of 100 and make it 39% out of 80. And then you get down to the number of the ANC at 46 to 47%, which is right in line with every other poll in this particular country. But no, if you read Daily Maverick, it says, ANC at 39%. Absolute nonsense. And you should call out journalists on this bullshit.
You absolutely should call out journalists on this bullshit, because unfortunately these polls are often led and issued in order to persuade public opinion. Now, what's interesting about all the polls that we are looking at right now is that none of them take into account the MK party, which currently, by latest estimations, may take off the ANC anywhere between 6 and 8% of the vote. But even more interestingly, it's not actually taking anything off the ANC. It's actually hitting the EFF the hardest, which is why that percentage point at 18% for the EFF appears to me nonsense.
Yeah, like complete crud. There is no poll anywhere in this country that puts the EFF above 12%. It is absolutely untrue that it is above 12% anywhere. And as you said, Byron, the MK party, based on preliminary sources that we have, and this is up for debate, we don't have the final sources yet, MK is pulling 7% nationally. It's eating ANC votes and eating EFF votes. Now that the MK party exists, EFF is below 10%, as we predicted at the time. Of course, polling is not a prediction of the election, but if you do a poll that costs 15 million rand to do, gives you a bullshit number of 39% for the ANC and whatever 18% for the EFF, and you don't take into account MK, your poll is absolute bullshit and not worth talking about in mainstream media. Yet, here we are as a country talking about a bullshit poll in mainstream media.
We are talking about a bullshit poll, and unfortunately, that bullshit poll will obviously affect investor confidence. You know that thing we love to talk about, investor confidence. Unfortunately, a lot of people will make decisions based on polls because they don't want to get to an election and see the inevitable occur, the inevitable as they see it in the poll, and therefore they'll actually make political decisions based on polls. But the polls themselves are flawed, and have been right around the world. According to the polls, the UK was never having Brexit, and Donald Trump was unelectable. So what stake can we really put in polls? But more importantly, what stake can we really put on the journos who interpret the polls and provide you an electoral message?
And the one thing that really kills this poll out and out is there is no model on the turnout. So turnout in an election determines the election. If more ANC people come out to vote for the ANC will get 50%. If the ANC people stay at home and there's a lower turnout, but the DA supporters come out, the DA will have a higher proportion of the vote. Any poll that does not have any sort of turnout modeling is a bullshit poll. Yet somehow, because this poll was paid for by private white libs, it gets, in the Daily Maverick for some reason. But there is no turnout model, so the poll is actually bullshit. I have it on good accord. This poll cost 15 million rand to run, and it was run by private individuals who are funding Roger Jardine's party. Just imagine, people keep saying there's no money in South Africa, but apparently there's a lot of money for bullshit polls that mean absolutely nothing in the greater scheme of things. It's just unbelievable waste of money.
The reason that this poll becomes even more important is that at the weekend, Julius Malema came out and said that basically the ANC were losing Gauteng come 2024 and had already lost the Western Cape, which they'd done for some time. So according to Julius, the battleground in the country was KZN. Because without KZN, effectively it becomes very difficult to win a national election. And Julius is absolutely right. The reason Julius highlighted this is that as KZN is now the main battleground for the 2024 elections, that also happens to be the home ground of the MK party, which happens to be surging in support in that area.
It certainly is. And what is interesting about Zuma's party, MK party, is the IFP says they are willing to work with it once they understand what the policies are of the MK party. And there is a potential scenario where Zuma is in coalition with the IFP and the DA in KZN. But there is one thing that screws up this entire scenario. The DA treated Zuma terribly. Terribly. And I think Zuma has a lot of resentment against the DA and against white South Africans generally for the way he was treated while he was president. The only person who can turn him around is Helen Zille. Helen Zille always said Zuma, was venal and all that, but he treated her very well. He was very polite to her, always treated her with respect. And hopefully Helen can jump on a plane, go to Nkandla and hash out a coalition agreement between MK, IFP and the DA in KZN. If that happens, doesn't matter what happens nationally, the ANC's done.
Yes. Now, you may recall that when Zuma got incarcerated for the whole 24 hours or whatever, when he had, the mostly peaceful process in KZN, Helen Zille came out and wrote a piece in the news, basically saying, Zuma, please stay strong. I recall the time when I was the first Premier of the Western Cape, and you were very kind to me. And that kindness I'll never forget. Helen, take your own words of advice now. Do the right thing for the country. Go to Zuma and go make a deal. Make peace. And that peace could have massive ramifications on the future of this country.